I next made a guide out of plywood that would allow me to cut a hole in the metal siding. Took some measurements on the outside, located the center of where I wanted the hole to be for the stovepipe to go through, drilled out a center hole to support a bolt, quarter-inch bolt, so I could swivel my jigsaw on it. I just made a quick trammel out of a scrap of plywood, figured out the radius, drilled a hole for the pivot bolt, and a hole to hold my pencil, and just drew a circle. Used a fitting to make sure it was the right size, and I was pretty happy with the way it turned out. Next, I drilled some half-inch diameter holes, about 120 degrees apart, just 3 holes. What this would allow me to do is drill some pilot holes in the siding. I marked out a stop about a half an inch before each of the holes and set my jigsaw up on a quarter-inch bolt pivot. What I'll do is just go ahead and start cutting out the circle, stopping a half an inch shy of the 3 holes that I drilled before. That way the base plate still has something to ride on. Put the pivot bolt in. I then went and located the center where the template would fit on the outside. Took the thimble off. Drill a pilot hole, then another hole. Quarter-inch bolt fit through. Threaded the quarter-inch bolt through it. Took some measurements on the outside to where the screws that hold the siding on were located in relation to that center hole. Went ahead and marked out 4 holes and drilled out some pilot holes. These are the 4 screws I'm going to take out. Actually, I only took out 2. Put a nut on that bolt. Removed 4 screws. Like I said, I only used 2. Finagled a stab onto the center bolt. Went ahead and screwed in a couple of screws to hold the template on. Secured the bolt again with another nut. Took about a half-inch diameter metal drill bit, drilled that out. Brought my jigsaw outside. Where I screwed up was I was using the same blade, which was meant for metal cutting, and it wasn't long enough. And on the right side, I was going through two panels. Ended up going to town to get me a longer blade that was meant for cutting metal, and that seemed to work a lot better. Once I got that done, I removed the plywood guide and took some tin snips and cut the hole complete. And then went inside and took a piece of the 3-foot stovepipe to see if it would fit, knowing that it wouldn't. Then grabbed some tin snips and just carefully just trimmed around, just kind of eyeballing it. Having to cut through 2 thicknesses at that location was kind of difficult. Just a matter of back and forth, cleaning it up. I was getting pretty close with the tin snips. Went back inside, tried to fit the pipe again, still wouldn't fit. Went and grabbed a Dremel tool with one of the stone grinding wheels on it, stone grinding bits, and tried grinding on that metal with that. It was throwing sparks and it wasn't really doing a very good job, and eventually it just flew off. That I had a rasp that I picked up somewhere with a quarter-inch shank on it. I ended up just chucking that in my cordless drill. It turned a lot slower and it didn't throw sparks, so there's no fear of catching the paper backing on the insulation on fire. It was just a matter of just slowly going at it, nibbling it down. Finally got smart and used a fitting rather than that 3-foot piece of pipe. It was a lot lighter. Once I got it to where I liked it and it was going to fit, I went ahead and put the thimble back in. Putting the thimble back in was pretty easy. Had the pre-drilled holes from where I'd first had it secured. Went ahead and put the stovepipe in. Outside, kind of lined it up, pull it through, fit nicely. I next grabbed the transition piece that goes from stovepipe to chimney pipe and checked my clearances. So you can get 6 inches, close to 6 inches from the combustibles. I was well out of that range. Now, next weekend I had to cut down the metal panels that were on the inside to fit around the uh, faux brick wall that I had built previously. Went ahead and marked that out. Measured and marked it. Measured it conservatively. I didn't want to cut it too big. Mrs. Wilson had picked up these battery-powered tin snips. She tried using them on vinyl siding and they didn't work. I decided I would give them a try. Never used them before. I was having issues. I could get over the first corrugation, but when I got to the second corrugation, it just wouldn't go. I decided I would just piecemeal it, just rough cut it out. I had a good line there. Just cut little pieces off at a time. Again, like I said, I could not quite get over that second corrugation. It just wasn't cooperating with me. Well, once I got it down to where I thought it would be, went back inside and cut a 2x4. Got my handy dandy pocket hole jig out. Set this 2x4 in here to support the bottom of that panel when I get it set. Brought that panel in, put it in place, make sure it's going to fit, and sure enough, wasn't quite wide enough. Went back out, cut about an inch off of it, stuck it in place, and made sure it lined up, fit nicely. Grabbed a couple of the mounting screws for the panel, finagle the panel around a bit, set the screws in place, set the panel in place with screws, just a few screws here and there, just to hold it. Felt comfortable with the measurements that I had. Went ahead and marked out where the center, just eyeball center of the where the thimble is, where the stovepipe will go through. Grab the next panel and do the same thing. measured it, marked it out. Got the battery-powered tin snips out. Started going to town on it. Again, he was giving me fits. Found that I could change the angle on the head of the tin snips, but that seemed to help a little bit. I was able to get over a couple more corrugations, but it was just, I fought it all the way. But it was a lot better than doing it by hand with the normal hand tin snips. I got that piece cut. Take this in and slide it in place. And fit pretty good. Go ahead and secure this piece down with a couple of screws just so I can drill a hole for the chimney pipe to fit through. Went ahead and verified the location of the hole. Mark out where the hole's going to be. Pre-drill a hole. So, this time I took my handy dandy little trammel with a magic marker, drew a circle on where the stovepipe should go through. I worked with a sprinkler fitter, and he told me the easiest way to cut a large hole in a piece of metal like this was to use a small hole saw. I wasn't going to use the template I had before. That didn't really work too good. So I decided to give this a try. I took a 4-inch hole saw, cut a 4-inch hole so that the edge lined up right on the edge of my circle. Since I had the thimble in there, it came out right where I wanted it. That was a good suggestion, and I'm happy with this. Now, I wasn't going to go ahead and try and drill out all the rest of that. I decided, well, I've got tin snips of all sorts, and I'll just throw everything I have at it. Just go ahead and snip away. And because I hadn't secured the two panels together, I was able to pull one panel away and just cut through one thickness at a time with tin snips. And it was just a matter of taking tin snips, side cutters, whatever I had, just a little bit at a time, just cutting out little pieces. I could see the edge of the thimble inside as a guide, and I had the circle I drew, which turned out to be pretty much spot on. Just a matter of whittling away at it. Once I got it down pretty close to the line, I went ahead and chucked up this rasp. I must have picked this up at a farm auction somewhere. I use this thing quite a bit. 1/4-inch shank, chuck it up in a drill, fits right inside of a 1/2-inch conduit EMT for deburring, and it works pretty good for grinding away at this metal. It doesn't throw sparks when it's chucked up in the drill. Drill's not spinning it fast enough, so I'm not throwing sparks on the paper backing of the fiberglass insulation in there. Just go ahead, and I went ahead and ground this out, so it was about a 1/4 inch outside of the thimble, so the stovepipe wouldn't interfere. I pushed it back through the thimble. So I was happy with what it was. Went back outside and pushed the stovepipe back on through. I made some escutcheons. I couldn't find any escutcheons, so I made some escutcheons. They sell these wall plates, these galvanized steel wall plates. And I just marked them and bent them, kind of tacked them together. My welder kind of burnt through them. Went ahead and marked where the corrugations were and drew out where I was going to cut off some excess. I went back later on and got Bondo body putty and smoothed it all out and painted these up. Made one for the inside and one for the outside. Just makes for a nice clean transition. That one fit pretty good. Next I had to make a support to go on the outside to support the weight of the chimney pipe, the horizontal chimney pipe and the vertical. I bought this metal cutting blade specifically for cutting metal on a circular saw. I've typically used the abrasive type wheel for cutting. I've heard people say you don't really need to cinch down a saw blade on these saws. I cut this piece of angle in half. This is going to be vertical pieces that are going to be secured to the side of the building. Went ahead and located the holes as they line up on the holes that are currently have the screws that hold the siding on. I use 1/4-inch lag bolts and marked the location of the holes, drilled them out. Once I got those pieces cut and drilled, went ahead and marked out, laid it out. I was going to put some supports, square this up, put some supports using angle iron to support the base of the pipe as it comes through the wall, and also to hold this arrangement together. Marked out the location, tack these in place for right now, come back later and weld them in. One at the bottom, one at the top. Now I have to cut some right at this location. I should have known that something was wrong when I cut that piece of metal. The saw was didn't cut all the way through. I didn't really think anything of it until I went to make this cut, and it didn't cut. I was like, huh. Felt like the arbor broke on my saw, and the bolt was quite loose. This is a left-hand thread, so it's righty loosey, lefty tighty. Looked at the arbor, it seemed okay. Went ahead and put the screw back on. This time I went ahead and cinched it down. These two pieces are going to be the horizontals that come out and support another bracket. Went ahead and marked off location so I can notch it out, fit around the other pieces of angle. Took my angle grinder and just grind a notch out of it on both of them. Go ahead and square these up, line them up, tack them in place. Went out and marked it out. When I was happy with it, went ahead and welded everything, welded all my tacking together. This is the orientation it'll end up being on the building. And finally, verify my other escutcheon fits right in there. And that's it for this week.